had been a little while already that I wanted to talk to you about a philosopher I discovered a few years ago after my philosophy studies, who did not leave me indifferent, and whom I can even say is one of my favorite philosophers. This philosopher is Schopenhauer. He is a German philosopher from the 18th and 19th centuries, a man who had a rather original, personal, and powerful vision of the world, and I would like to present it to you briefly in a few words. Schopenhauer was a thinker apart, a somewhat peculiar thinker, both in his worldview and in his behavior, his manner of acting, and his way of expressing himself. For example, he did not hesitate to attack head-on, sometimes even with insults, those with whom he disagreed. In Schopenhauer's time, the most prominent, most renowned, and most appreciated philosopher was Hegel. And Schopenhauer did not hesitate to mock Hegel, whom he described as a university philosopher. For him, the university at that time was nothing more than an extension of state ideology. He positioned himself entirely against the institution, against academic teaching, against official philosophy. And one can understand that he may also have developed a certain frustration at not being recognized in his own time as a great mind and a full-fledged philosopher. I told you that Schopenhauer had an original vision of the world. What was this vision? He develops and presents it in his best-known and rather monumental work, The World as Will and Representation. What does that mean? For Schopenhauer, the world as we know it, as we see it, as we study it, is not in a certain sense the true world. It is rather the shell of the world, one facet of the world, what we might call its external face. And this is what he calls representation. This world of representation is the world we perceive, analyze, and try to give meaning to, particularly through science, intellect, and reason. In this world that is ours, things have meaning. They obey the law of causality, the principle of sufficient reason. A cause produces an effect, and no effect exists without a cause. Nothing happens without reason, and we can account for everything that happens. This is the scientific view of the world, which could be called the materialist view. Schopenhauer completely escapes these categories of materialism and idealism. He situates himself beyond them. This world of representation is also the world of space and time. Everything necessarily exists within space and time. We cannot represent something outside of space. Space is, so to speak, the very structure of our mind. And just as we cannot represent things outside of space, we cannot represent them outside of time. Everything is subject to chronology. There is always a before, a during, and an after. We cannot think outside this idea of temporality. We cannot truly think eternity. When we think time, we always imagine it divided into past, present, and future. And if we reflect on it, the past and the future do not exist. They are mental representations. The only thing that exists is the present. And for Schopenhauer, the only thing that truly exists beyond the world of representation is the instant. And the instant is eternity. To help you understand what Schopenhauer calls representation, I must now turn to what he calls the will. What is the will? It is, in a sense, the inner face of the world, what Kant called the thing in itself, the unsayable foundation of reality. This foundation is something that cannot be conceived by the mind or grasped by the intellect. It escapes completely our capacities for understanding. We think and represent things through the categories of space and time, and we cannot think outside them. The will is precisely what lies outside space and time. It therefore escapes our categories of representation and thought. It is totally inaccessible to us through intellectual tools.
The will is the source of our physical, material, observable world, what Schopenhauer calls the world of representation. It animates the world of representation. For Schopenhauer, the world of representation is the expression of the world of the will. The word expression is interesting. It literally means pressed outward. The world of representation is what is pushed outward by the world of the will. It is the visible surface of the will, and it is the only reality to which we truly have access. Put differently, the will is the intimate being of the world, while representation is its surface, its external film. Imagine the ocean. Representation is the surface of the water, while the will is the ocean floor. The surface expresses the depths, which remain inaccessible. For Schopenhauer, we cannot dive into the will, we are confined to the surface of representation. Thus, we do not truly know the world, we know its surface. When I see a bottle of water in front of me, for me it is simply a bottle of water. I can touch it, measure it, describe it. That is the only reality for me. As a conscious subject, I do not think of it as a representation, I think of it as the world itself. And this is because human beings are incapable of going beyond representation, at least through intellect. Science produces knowledge of reality, only of physical, material reality, the world of representation. This world may be enough for us, but for Schopenhauer, it is also a world of illusion. It makes us believe we are greater than we really are. Human beings possess intellect, which makes them conceptual animals, but despite this, we can only understand how the world works, not why it exists. The why belongs to the will, and we have no access to it. We have indirect knowledge of the will because it manifests itself through representation. Ourselves are manifestations of the will. Life is at the heart of representation. We know how life functions, but not why it exists. The will has no reason for being. It simply is. Its only goal is to perpetuate itself. The will is an amorphous, chaotic, eternal, infinite energy that propagates through beings. The instinct of survival is one of its manifestations. We do not know why we want to survive, we just do. This instinct is irrational, animal, and yet we obey it. This is what Schopenhauer finds tragic. We are conscious of life, but incapable of understanding its meaning. We believe we are free, but we are merely localized expressions of the will. We work to perpetuate life without knowing why. Schopenhauer compares the will to Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects. It makes people work for it without them knowing it. We perpetuate life voluntarily without understanding that we are instruments of the will. Life has a goal that is no goal, to perpetuate itself. We love life blindly without knowing why. This leads to Schopenhauer's view on love. Love, for him, is an illusion created by the will to ensure reproduction. Love and sexual desire are the same thing. Love is simply the socially accepted form of sexual desire. The only real difference between humans and animals is that humans question the meaning of existence.
Seduction is, for Schopenhauer, hypocrisy. It inevitably leads to sex, and sex leads to reproduction. Love is a trick of nature, a trick of the will to make us consent to the endless repetition of life. Sexuality is the most primitive and pure expression of the will. It is totally irrational. We can explain how desire works, but never why it exists. After sex, the feeling of shame is, according to Schopenhauer, a moment of lucidity, a realization of our fundamental bestiality. Sexual desire is perhaps the clearest representation of the will within the world of representation.
Schopenhauer writes, "The sexual instinct is the cause of war and the goal of peace." And every amorous inclination is merely a more precisely determined, individualized sexual instinct. The procreation of a specific child is the true aim, though unknown to the actors in every love story. Life, for Schopenhauer, is an absolute tragedy. It is filled with suffering and ignorance. The only way to end this tragedy is to stop procreating, to stop producing beings destined to suffer. This is, for him, an act of lucidity and compassion. Lucidity means understanding that life has no meaning, that existence is absurd, and that we act without knowing why. Compassion means refusing to perpetuate this endless cycle of suffering. That's it. So, with that said, enjoy life.